In the studio, Mikhail, Khazin. We are starting another session of Economics in Russian. Today there will not be any guests, and we will be discussing economic theory. Not so much regarding theory, but regarding practice. And in the context of a highly specific country, namely the United States of America. The reality is there is an immense amount of what is commonly known as legends surrounding dinosaurs and their existence. About how everything is good there, or, on the contrary, how everything is bad, how here, accordingly, crowds of drug addicts and homeless people run along the trendiest streets of Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, and other similar cities, and so on and so forth, or conversely about the cleanliness and the level of maintenance in that place, and so on and so forth. There are plenty of stories about people who arrived there in the early 90s and were amazed, saying, "This is a dream, yes, this is a dream." And on the contrary, those who come now and say, "Horror, horror, horror." I've already told this story, not in economics in Russian, but people came to me for consultation, a husband and wife. Well, actually, the wife arrived because the husband was away during that period, Our Lady, and the husband is from the United States, and she accomplished she pursued a career, got married, and together with her husband and 2 children, they moved to Russia, because both she and her husband came to the conclusion that they couldn't live there anymore. And when the husband came back after a year or 2, or even 3, of residing in Russia to handle some affairs there, including family matters, he was unable to stay there for 2 months, returned back after 2 weeks and said, "You cannot live in this country anymore. It is no longer possible for us to reside here." All of these are subjective matters. However, let us state it directly, that state propaganda and project-based, referring to global projects, operate with a high level of activity and play a significant role. It is important to acknowledge the impact and influence of these factors in shaping public opinion. Due to this, we see various info about how things are bad in some places, including here, and about how it's the opposite, leading to contrasting perspectives. In this particular place, it is good, but on the contrary. Well, and so on and so forth. And if you do not have any sources of information, it is incredibly difficult to figure out who is saying what, which can be quite frustrating. Many believe that living in Europe is impossible, but people who live there say no, nothing particularly extraordinary is happening. Yeah, there are different Muslims running around there, but you shouldn't go where they're running. And in Europe, there have always existed locations that you would be better off avoiding, and so on. I'm not even talking about the United States of America, and so forth and so on. Due to this reason, I desired to have a discussion regarding 2 highly significant messages that possess an absolutely objective nature and convey a substantial amount of information about the real occurrences taking place in the very same United States of America. It is evident why the United States of America is in control, because they are the ones who have control over the global dollar system. It should be noted that the attacks of the United States of America on Russia, right here with China, problems with money transfers began, and with Turkey, very strong problems with money transfers started. But at the same time, well, the Western, especially the American one, cannot fail to understand that if they exclude quite large subsystems from the global economic system, it automatically reduces their sphere of influence. They possess a covert aspiration that during the procedure, this portion will transform into a diminutive size. However, as we can observe, it does not always work out. Not to mention the fact that today, we are witnessing a highly active division that is starting to emerge among the largest entities in the industry. So to speak, inter-country alliances, which can be said to have a dominant role, are the driving force behind global projects throughout the world, if you will. We see a split in the Western global project, that is, those who are called individuals Trump referred to as transnational financiers who can be identified as beneficiaries of the Bretton Woods system are international bankers who do not have a specific homeland. Recall that in 2011 they attempted to gain control over the emission of the global currency, distancing it from the United States of America. The United States of America fought back through the so-called Strauss-Kahn case. I really like it. I detailed in the book Ladder to the Sky that I co-authored with Sergei Sheglov in 2016, and later in Reflections on the Future, I wrote specifically from an economic perspective. As in Ladder to the Sky, we naturally described the authoritative aspects of this process. However, the main focus in this context is on this particular aspect. The crucial point to note is that global projects, which have a significant influence and control over the world in the present time. There are a total of 3 of them. The first one, without a doubt, is of Western origin. These individuals are bankers. In the second place is the Jewish project representing the elite of the former British Empire, who continue to actively intervene in global politics. Moreover, the worse their economic situation gets, the more they interfere in international politics. And lastly, the third group is the Islamic Global Project, which is currently in a networking stage, indicating that it has numerous competing centers that nevertheless exert a highly active influence on world events. In this sense, Saudi Arabia, Iran, the Houthis, and the Muslim diaspora in Western Europe, all of them are parts of the Islamic Global Project, as they share the same fundamental ideologies, although their constructions differ based on this ideology. The Muslim diaspora in Western Europe is also included in this project, highlighting the broad reach and influence of the Islamic Global initiative. So, the commencement of the breakup occurred, and we witness it. And there exists a remarkably, let's say, compelling hypothesis that the terrorist attack in Crocus was a premonition or an indication of future events that may unfold. This was a warning to Russia and Putin. The very fact of this terrorist act, well, to put it bluntly, with a high probability, it was initially planned as an addition to Beslan II. But with Beslan II it didn't work out, and the Ukrainian activity on the border with the Belgorod region didn't end in anything. In accordance with this, it is important to note the undeniable reality of the situation at hand. Terrorist attack. It was a warning to Putin to listen carefully. Undoubtedly, the organizers of this act of terrorism are London. It is the global project of the Jewish community. Let's note, by the way, so that no one has any illusions, that as soon as the word is associated with the words Jew, Jewish, and so on, everyone immediately starts talking about a global Jewish conspiracy. So I would like to mention immediately that one of the main objectives of the Jewish Global Project is to eradicate the State of Israel, in order to leave no room for misconceptions regarding a worldwide conspiracy. So there might be a worldwide conspiracy there, but not only one. If you perceive such actions as a global conspiracy, then there are approximately 20 global conspiracies functioning in the world at the same time. There is a Russian global conspiracy, and it's diverse. There's a red one, there's an Orthodox one, there's a Chinese global conspiracy, and we're not even talking about the American one. I mean, well, do not participate in foolishness. So there you have it. The precise time and geographical location of the devastating terrorist attack, that is. Purim, one of the oldest Jewish holidays, is of great importance in religious and cultural contexts. This building, belonging to the Jewish community of Azerbaijani origin, serves as a warning to both groups here, emphasizing the need to preserve traditions and heritage. The observance of Purim in this place reinforces its historical and symbolic value, reminding us of the enduring legacy of the Jewish people and the significance of this annual celebration. This indicates that even within the Jewish Global Project, there are substantial and noteworthy internal disagreements that cannot be overlooked or underestimated. We have already discussed the United States of America. However, if there are any disagreements, they should somehow or in some way manifest or become apparent. In the case of London, it is clear that we can observe all these stories with terrorist attacks and other circumstances, including issues with Israel, as manifestations of internal conflicts. And what about in the USA? In the United States of America, we witness political conflict, but there is absolutely no sign or indication of any economic conflict in the US. It gives the impression that the complete economic elite of the United States of America is in some kind of well, unified in accordance with team, working together towards a common goal. Yes, it is. The group of liberal financiers in this sense has disagreements with, for instance, the team of Trump. But we do not see individuals who would distance themselves from this liberal financial group, even though they may have differing opinions within the team. By the way, as an illustration, in our country, such a division has always existed, despite the all-powerfulness of the liberal team in the Ministry of Finance, the central bank, and in all expert centers, for example, without a doubt. As of today, our country does not have any expert centers that are not liberal in their approach. To put it differently, all individuals who possess the capacity to articulate non-liberal positions are effectively excluded from participation. However, there is a relatively coherent political economic position that acts as a counterbalance to the liberal course of action, providing an alternative perspective and serving as a check against potential imbalance in the prevailing ideology. And, in a sense, I myself am part of this opposition. Yes, it is not allowed into any positions, meaning its representatives do not hold positions in the leadership of major universities, major expert organizations, major banks, major consulting companies, not to mention ministries and departments. However, despite this, we still play a rather crucial and influential role in the public political arena, which cannot be underestimated or overlooked. And in the United States of America, there is no such thing. There is no public opposition, even at the level of some individual experts of liberal economic thought. And it seemed like it would last forever. And for this reason, the West is unable to articulate the problems it has encountered. It is unmistakably clear, as on a weekly basis, representing the Khazin Fund, I consistently write macroeconomic reviews alongside my colleagues, affording me the privilege to witness and study speeches delivered by the head of the Federal Reserve, as well as analyze comments provided by a multitude of experts from different backgrounds and perspectives. By the way, in the past couple of weeks, the leaders of several major banks have started hinting at the possibility of significant negative events, indicating that they are sort of looking for some excuses. However, we will come back to that later. Nevertheless, at the level of experts, specifically those who claim scientific knowledge, despair was complete and total until recently, but now there has been a significant shift in understanding and perspective. And just 1 month ago, it all began, and I will share with you the details of these two stories. So, I'd like to mention from the start that I possess texts that have been translated into Russian, which I will be discussing, and, as a result, there are corresponding references to their original sources in English. To the best of my understanding, they are utilizing paid resources, which is the reason why I shared these Russian translations that were sent to me in my private Telegram channel. Well, because you do not want to ruffle any feathers or cause any controversy, so they think it is kind of like a private property. Well, okay, sure, but I positioned it in a private channel. So a pair of articles were published. The initial one was released in a certain location, most likely a few months back. The second one was released on March 14th. Well, so essentially there were 3 weeks ago, 2.5. The initial article, published by a group of American economists, states that the United States utilizes an incorrect methodology to assess inflation, according to the findings of the economists. I pondered for an extended period of time about whether or not to display graphs to the viewers. Subsequently, I reached the determination that it is unnecessary due to the fact that I already have them available in my Telegram channel. Consequently, graphs on television always tend to be bothersome. Here I am, nevertheless, so I will articulate everything in words. Thus, the interest lies not only in what this group accomplished and put forward an alternative methodology, but also in the fact that an individual of this kind is a member of this group. The individual named Lawrence Summers, commonly referred to as Larry Summers, is a character in the story. Larry Summers was in the Clinton administration for many years as Deputy Secretary of the Treasury under Rubin, eventually becoming Secretary of the Treasury, and later became the President of Harvard. There is a well-known movie about the founder of Facebook, as well as a fictional film that includes a scene depicting a dispute between him and his brothers over the ownership of the company. In this scene, he visits Summers to resolve the disagreement. So, Larry Summers is similar to a particular symbol of corruption in America, representing the Democratic Party's corruption just as the symbol represents the corruption in the Republican Party. Therefore, Larry Summers is seen as a symbol of corruption within the Democratic Party. Democratic in the sense of the Democratic Party. There is a legend, spread by malicious tongues in the 1990s, that Chubais was transporting suitcases filled with cash to Larry Summers, the renowned economist in Switzerland. I won't be surprised. That could potentially be a reality. However, you see, engaging in arguments with malicious tongues is futile, because that is what is referred to as urban legends. They are frequently grounded in reality, but it is difficult to verify, although I believe that those who followed Chubais, including his security as the Deputy Prime Minister, of course, were aware of it. So the information about this, of course, exists, but it's classified. This means that Larry Summers has a dream. He wants to receive, and it is also well known, he wants to receive the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics, which they have not yet given him. Many were given to others, but they were not given to him. Perhaps precisely due to his excessive political involvement, and because of this, the individuals accountable for bestowing this medal express a certain concern that they should strictly adhere to the principles of pure scientific inquiry. And this particular recipient, he was not only included in the budget, but he was also explicitly mentioned as a recipient of funding in the budgetary allocation. However, in any case, the fact that he is one of the authors of the article significantly amplifies its weight, adding a substantial level of importance and significance to the overall content, and not only in the Western economic community, but also in the Western political one. This matter has a notable impact not only on the economy, but also on the politics of the Western world, in the community, including financially. So, accordingly, in this article it is written, I will not be talking about what it is. Well, essentially they are saying that changes in interest rates and everything else need to be taken into account in inflation, because the cost of credit is a component of inflation. I repeat once again, I have the text in my private Telegram channel. So it says there, they say that in reality, inflation in the United States of America is significantly higher with a proper assessment. I engaged in active discussions and extensively addressed the topic of statistical distortions on my various platforms, ensuring a thorough exploration and analysis of the subject matter. Well, when Wolf Rice appeared, it was in 2003 or 2002, now I don't remember. Spring 2000, the second year, we extensively discussed this with various experts and with Andrei Kobyakov, the full name of the person involved. Correct. In the year 2002, Volt Cridis made an appearance, and in the year 2003 witnessed the decline of the dollar empire and the conclusion of Pax Americana. We discussed this with Grigoriev, we discussed this with Kobyakov, we discussed this with Ideshenets, we discussed this with Glaziev. We had a discussion about this with all individuals. There were even formal evaluations conducted. Well, as an illustration, what is the appropriate course of action if you eliminate inflation indicators from hedonistic indexes? I would like to remind you of what a hedonistic index is. Please imagine that you had a laptop 5 years ago that cost $500. After the passage of 5 years, the cost increased and eventually amounted to a total of $750. The identical laptop, but with the processor power and memory capacity doubled compared to the previous version of the laptop. You don't notice this because you're not using it to its full potential. A significant portion of the power is consumed by the new operating system, the capabilities of which you're not utilizing much. However, according to the American statistical model, you derive twice as much pleasure from this computer as you did from the one 5 years ago. Therefore, its price impact needs to be divided by 2. That is, 750 divided by 2, resulting in 375. So 375 is roughly a third less than 500. For this reason, in this sector, a decrease in prices, deflation, is considered to be occurring. From the perspective of the consumers, you have expended 1.5 times the amount of money. Now, if we remove it, we must consider that hypothetical indices aren't used in all sectors of the USA, but in many of them. And for this reason, well, for example, I wouldn't be surprised if soon it will be used in all sorts of sausages, ground meats, and so on, where it will be stated that due to the fact that this sausage contains ecologically clean offal, therefore we use the hedonistic index, and accordingly, instead of a price increase of 10%, there is a decrease of 35%. Sasha Felon denied 5. Well, and Paris is already a beneficial hygienic protein source. Consequently, Mercico himself does not take into account any hedonistic indicators or consider any hedonistic indexes due to the fact that Paris is a valuable, clean protein for him. They take into consideration only one effect. Therefore, in the graph they provide, they display the new level of inflation in recent years. Well, actually after the year 2021, when interest rates started to rise sharply and had a significant impact on the economy. I will remind you that inflation commenced to rise around the months of August and September in the year 2021. So inflation in the USA. So for them, it turns out that the new level of inflation is 3 to 4% higher than the old one. Interest rates are higher than before, I remind you. That inflation directly affects economic growth. So if you recalculate inflation, it becomes 3 to 4% higher. Then you need to subtract these 3 to 4% from the economic growth indicators in order to, well, there are actually, as mathematicians say, influences of higher order terms, but they already have a significant impact on more distant figures, extending to tenths of a percent in a noticeable and meaningful way. And as a result, we obtain a magnificent picture that since the autumn of 2021, there has been a persistent and continuous economic decline in the United States of America. I would like to mention, without considering disregarding, without taking into account hedonistic indices and additional tools for comprehending and gaining insights into inflationary trends. Even according to official data, kindly note that in the same reviews of the Economic Research Fund by Mikhail Khazin, which are openly available commencing from only the last 3 months have been closed. You can verify, for instance, the review from the month of August. Well, there are 4 reviews coming out each month. It seems like this is the last review for August 2021. Where it's written that contrary to what Powell said about inflation being temporary, in reality it will be long-lasting, and that in the United States of America a structural economic crisis has begun, a complete analog of the crisis of 1930 to 1932. One could argue and say that Powell is basing his statements on official stats, while you are recalculating something over there. We mentioned that we are not recalculating, but rather highlighting the evident inconsistencies regarding Powell himself. Statistical information, the data sets do not match up. There are indicators that change simultaneously and in a synchronized manner. If one has grown, then the other has grown. And if one has grown while the other has fallen, then with a 99% probability, it means that either in one or in the other or in both, distortion is taking place. Statistics. Therefore, we stated that an economic downturn has commenced, but the United States of America have not demonstrated and continue to not demonstrate this economic downturn. They continue to demonstrate economic growth, despite the fact that they have been experiencing a decline in the industry for nearly 1 year at this point in time. We will provide a response that includes all indirect indicators for each of the federal districts in a comprehensive and thorough manner. Just a reminder, the Federal Reserve System consists of 12 regional districts. All of these indicators demonstrate a prolonged industrial downturn. If we take a look at the price indicators within the industry, covering the entire range of industrial goods in the United States of America, there has been a serious deflation, a decline in prices for a very long period of time, which is precisely a symptom of a downturn in the economy. But they showed an industrial decline about a year ago, maybe even a little less. And here it's still going on even by formal indicators, but nevertheless it's insignificant. And in reality, I believe it is all much worse. However, the work conducted by Summers and Company is not just important, but also highly significant in its impact and contribution. She is a representation of their commencement. There are individuals within their system who consistently work against its internal unity, posing a constant threat to the overall stability and cohesion of the system. According to them, guys, it is claimed that everything here is false. This is because if there is inflation, then everything needs to be recalculated towards a sharp decline. What is this? Is this an attempt to blame Powell or an attempt to distance oneself from her? If suddenly, let's say, in May, June, there is a stock market crash on a scale comparable to 1929, well, or at least to 2008, and so on and so forth. That is what needs to be figured out. That is the matter that requires resolution. In my opinion, it would be beneficial to invite an expert on the United States of America to the next meeting, like Dima Drobnitsky or, accordingly, Dmitry Evstafiev. The main objective of their presence would be to specifically discuss this topic in detail and provide valuable insights and expertise. In reality, I am able to disclose a truly terrifying secret. I had a strong desire to invite Dmitry Evstafiev to be a part of today's show, but unfortunately, he was unable to attend. However, this could also be advantageous, as if he had arrived, I would not have had the chance to delve into the essence of this story with such depth, which has greatly contributed to my understanding and analysis of the subject matter at hand. Now, this is the first article which, I'll reiterate once again, has an incredibly important political character due to the presence of Larry Summers among the authors. This article carries significant weight in the political sphere, primarily because of Larry Summers' inclusion. It cannot be overstated how crucial this article is in terms of its political implications, given the esteemed authorship of Larry Summers. In accordance with this, on the 14th of March, an article is released on behalf of the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, which is one of the constituent parts of the Federal Reserve System, providing an assessment and analysis of the labor statistics of the United States of America, offering valuable insights and information to the public. It is noteworthy that for many decades it has been one of the most distorted. This distortion has greatly impacted the Federal Reserve System, which, as is widely recognized, operates under two mandates: ensuring the stability of the national currency and maintaining a low level of unemployment. In response to this distortion, The Federal Reserve System initiated the practice of calculating unemployment itself approximately 15 or 20 years ago, because she found that the data she has and the data provided by the Bureau of Labor Statistics of the United States Department of Labor, well, they just don't match up at all. Moreover, I remember that sometime before the 2008 crisis, there was a funny story when representatives of the Federal Reserve said that this year, roughly speaking, they had already counted them by that time 3 or 4 years, and they said that this year was the worst of those we counted in terms of unemployment. Simultaneously, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, an agency under the Department of Labor, declared that this year is regarded as one of the best in recent times. To clarify the procedure, you can mention just one specific aspect or detail as an illustration. Imagine that you put up a vase for sale for 150 rubles on a website like Avito or Mashok. So you had this little vase lying around. You absolutely don't need it, but maybe someone else will like it. There are individuals who derive pleasure from the process of listing items on the website, participating in auctions, sales, communication, and more, and so forth. Consequently, if you engage in an activity that, in accordance with the regulations established by the American authorities, automatically eliminates you from the workforce, thereby disqualifying you from any further employment opportunities. And for this reason, if you are jobless, you are not included in the count because you belong to the category of entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur, as known, is not labor. He is the one who creates work for himself. That is it, period. And that is how the Ministry of Labor was removing hundreds of thousands of individuals from the workforce every year in the 2000s. This was observed and acknowledged by numerous experts. And, in actuality, on the worldcrisis.ru website, where there was a very influential and robust forum during that time, particularly in the late 2000s and early 2010s, I would like to remind you, the site essentially ceased to exist and stopped functioning in 2015, so we extensively deliberated and discussed it in great detail there, analyzing its implications and ramifications. Currently, this is being discussed in the macroeconomic reviews conducted by Khazin Fund, but what is there to discuss at this point in time? Since macroeconomic reviews are based on official data, individuals can only make note of any inconsistencies for this reason. For instance, let's take a typical mismatch scenario that can serve as a clear example of the issue at hand. Reduction in unemployment and increase in employment occurring simultaneously with a decrease in the length of the work week in terms of hours, leading to a more balanced labor market. That is not how life works. You can envision that there is a change in the employment structure, such as innovative processes, and then over the span of multiple years, despite employment growing, the duration of the work week actually decreases slightly, resulting in a gradual reduction in working hours over time, which is a reflection of the evolving nature of the labor market. Well, for instance, due to a decrease in the number of individuals commuting to work, they initiated remote work arrangements and so forth, and so on. However, if you observe a significant decrease in unemployment, a rise in employment, and a reduction in the length of work within a month, weeks, I apologize, but that statement is false. That does not happen, because the first action taken by an employer upon seeing an improvement in the market situation is to start increasing the workload of the existing employees in order to make the most of the favorable conditions and enhance overall productivity levels. Because the process of hiring and training new employees always requires a significant amount of financial resources, it's better to increase the exploitation of those already existing. Yes, maybe increase their salaries or not increase them or give some bonuses or something else, but let them work more. As soon as you see a decrease in the length of the work week, especially if it's sudden, darn it's slow, it may indicate a change in structure quickly. This indicates that something is wrong. So The employees of the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, in a formal capacity, are subordinate to the head of the Federal Reserve, Powell. They publish data indicating that the Bureau of Labor Statistics of the United States Department of Labor has included fictitious jobs ranging from 800,000 to 1.3 million in their statistics. These jobs, although not directly attributable, have been included in the overall employment figures reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I won't delve into the details right now on how this changes the statistics figures, because everyone understands perfectly well that if they distorted them, it's not excluded that they distorted them in other places as well. And these 800 million, 300 from 2, it could actually be even more. The situation in which information about the distortion of official statistics is introduced into the official discourse by individuals who hold official status and are recognized as official figures represents a revolutionary development in the modern United States of America, marking a significant shift in the way information is presented and perceived. And in the event that you could still have suspicions about Summers being involved in some political intrigues, political ones, well, it is already concluded there, so let us simplify it to the point of idiocy, right? Summers received financial contributions from supporters of Trump, and he made the conscious decision to participate in a game or match against Biden. I comprehend that this is substantial nonsense, but nonetheless, in theory, such a thing is possible and should not be dismissed outright. Imagine for a moment that employees from the Central Bank of the Russian Federation, let's say from some Irkutsk branch, publish an article in their official journal accusing the Ministry of Economic Development and Rosstat of distorting statistics, manipulating data, and providing misleading information, which raises concerns about the reliability and transparency of the country's economic data and undermines public trust in the government's reporting. I can envision that they do not believe these statistics. Furthermore, it is entirely natural, as we all are aware, that the statistics of Rosstat, which is subordinate to the Ministry of Economic Development, has had a weak connection to reality for an extended period of time, spanning a considerable duration. However, to envision that this is officially published and yet there are no defeats mentioned there, I am unable to. Because in an instant, our ministry would have cried out, the minister of the gridiron would have cried out, and then serious disputes would have commenced, leading to potential escalation and prolonged conflicts. And in this place, everything is quiet and smooth thanks to the grace of God. I fully comprehend the rationale behind it. Because if you trust the executives of numerous prominent American financial institutions, as per numerous stock market experts, an enormous bubble is currently being formed in the stock market in the United States of America, which is causing concerns and raising alarm among investors. For individuals who have an interest, I strongly recommend reading Pavel Ryabov's Telegram channel, Spidal Finance. It is highly informative. He is an absolute virtuoso in the field of statistics, and he possesses a remarkable ability to very elaborately explain the exact distortions that can occur in data analysis. In my open Telegram channel, which is Khazin, and it is khazin.ml, there are approximately 215,000 subscribers to avoid any confusion with the numerous clones that exist, ensuring a clear and authentic experience for the audience. 15,000 poppy chicks, because there are already about 5-6 clones and they seem to be multiplying. Evidently, an individual is consistently generating income by secretly monetizing the texts that belong to me, without my awareness or consent. Therefore, if we take a closer look at the materials provided by Spidal, we can once again observe that he is basing his analysis on official statistics. Through his research, he vividly illustrates the extensive scale of the bubble that has been formed in the stock market, highlighting the potential risks involved. This emphasizes the importance of monitoring and addressing this issue to ensure the stability and sustainability of the financial market in the long run. And now let's imagine, Let's recall the year 2008. Someone might have a recollection of the years 2000, 2001. So the individuals who were engaged in all of this, they became extremely immersed in it. For instance, I have a vivid recollection of the scandals associated with rating agencies that provided high ratings to companies that had a very dismal performance in the year 2008. But that's understandable because rating agencies are not meant to serve some abstract purpose, to tell consumers some truth. And for that, they are just part of this entire Bretton Woods financial machinery. I have extensively talked about this matter, so I will not repeat myself now. In general, there are individuals who have likely made the decision to avoid possible troubles and complications that may arise. They have probably chosen to steer clear of any potential difficulties that could potentially arise from this situation. Therefore, it is understandable why they have taken this cautious approach. Just to express that at a later time, we provided a cautionary notice to inform and advise. Yes, of course, they were not the first to warn. Yes, of course, the book Twilight of the Empire, Dollar and the End of Pax Americana, was published in the year 2003. Yes, definitely, over there the logic is... I provided a description of the divisions in the United States of America during the Dartmouth conference that took place in November 2014, and so on and so forth. However, here is the unbreakable excuse. It is either scammers and crooks or individuals connected to particular political structures or certain political entities. In other words, those who are interested in the outcome. And here we are, real scientists. We have been studying inflation statistics for many years, finally wrote a well-written article, and now, look, you can trust us. You are unable to trust all of them because they missed this downturn, but we previously explained to you 6 months, a year ago, what would happen, so let us collaborate and work with us at this moment in time. And a similar situation with the leadership of the Fed. Yes, Powell personally could be disgracefully dismissed, but the Fed leadership itself... Guys, come on, we have displayed everything. Yes, undoubtedly we did not derive a conclusion from it, but here, gentlemen, you will pardon us. We do not have the right to draw conclusions based on expert opinions, as we lack the necessary authority to do so. Even if they are persuasive, we can only proceed with it by relying solely on the official figures and data provided to us. So we had hoped that we would draw the attention of the official experts of the Department of Labor, that they accordingly made a mistake, they would correct their mistake, and then we could change something in the Fed's policy. But we couldn't do that yet, and then it all collapsed. So for this reason, we, the Federal Reserve leadership, must stay put, as we found ourselves in an inadequate situation. I have an increasing amount of it. Yes, naturally. This cannot be accomplished well in advance for a mundane reason, because the general public may not immediately, but will take notice of such remarkable texts as Summers' article, and accordingly materials from the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, which provides valuable insights into economic trends and policy decisions. Upon her turn, she'll begin to act accordingly. With an ongoing economic downturn since September 2021, it's crucial to minimize risks. Consequently, even in the presence of economic growth, it starts declining due to the widespread shift towards savings by everyone. And if accordingly it's not there at all, then a very sharp decline begins, and there may even be a collapse. And when it was no longer possible to avoid this collapse, Pavel Ryabov talked about how this bubble began to form somewhere like this, already in such a on a large scale about 1.5 years ago. Well, figuratively speaking, at the end of 22, beginning of 23. Then the arguments commence. Because of the location of the bubble, how else would it be, going back and forth? But those who are interested can read his text, and I duplicated this text on my channel in order to share it with a wider audience. So here we go. If it is no longer possible to avoid this decline, then this is precisely the perfect time. Even if panic initiates among those, if a large number of individuals read this text, then in this scenario, well, okay, but the crisis will commence a couple of weeks earlier, well, a month earlier. Generally, this is not crucial. However, for those who ultimately become doctors, now everything is positive and favorable for them. It is worth mentioning, by the way, that both articles are written in a somewhat dry, scientific style. And for this reason, an ordinary entrepreneur will not read it, firstly, and even if they do, they may not fully comprehend or grasp the entirety of the content due to the technical nature of the writing. Although, let's say, with Summers, everything is clearly written there in plain text, there is simply a graph of old inflation, new inflation. But on the other hand, the entrepreneur may not know that this difference is more than just economic growth, and so on and so forth. In a similar vein, the situation depicted in the text revolves around the topic of employment. It is stated that the Bureau of Labor Statistics inflates employment figures, meaning it creates fictitious jobs, but no information is provided regarding the potential consequences of this action. Therefore, in order to draw a definitive conclusion, it is imperative to have a specific economic model in mind. Based on experience, it is evident that the majority of entrepreneurs do not have such a model in mind. They operate within a narrow professional sphere that is specific to their industry, and financiers in general lack an understanding of what added value economic growth entails. For them, it's just numbers in Excel models. And because of this specific reason, these articles quickly gain popularity and become highly coveted by readers from different walks of life. They are incapable of causing panic. However, over time, this knowledge will gradually expand, as I am not the sole expert who possesses the ability to clearly elucidate the significance of this. And in the USA they exist too. Yes, they are not on the newspaper pages, but there are many of them on the internet. All right, fine, there are a few dozen of them, and they all begin talking simultaneously, yeah, take a look here, take a look here, take a look here, for this particular reason. I have a feeling that this entire story is an indirect indication that the bubble, which Pavel Ryabov writes about, I must mention, by the way, that I am not an expert in the stock market, and for this reason, I am not prepared to analyze the scale or extent of the bubble at this time. It is not my business. There is a hypothesis, and in fact there is confirmation that this bubble has reached a scale where its economic system can no longer bear it. The magnitude of this bubble has become unsustainable, posing significant challenges to its economic system's ability to endure. There is a version suggesting that an economic collapse, this one, not even economic, but rather a financial collapse, will occur specifically in this year, according to some sources. Immediately, Pavel Ryabov stated that financing a 2 trillion deficit is impossible due to the lack of available sources, as the supply of free money in the market is depleting. The most optimistic projection suggests that the supply will be exhausted by July, while the most pessimistic one indicates that it could run out as early as this ongoing April. However, at present, Pavel has made revisions to his assessment for the month of May. And then, accordingly, something must be done. So we must reduce the deficit, meaning cutting the standard of living of the population in the pre-election year, or we must start printing money. So a sharp rise in inflation. This means that there was hope before that if we manage to hold on until August, then in August we can start printing. Because inflation, yes, will start, but over a period of 3 months, and accordingly after the elections. But there is one danger here, which is as follows. The thing is, since the financial system is completely distorted, I do not exclude that in the current conditions, if you start printing money, inflation will start not in 3 months, but in 2 weeks. And then there will be a catastrophic event during the elections. However, if there is already an agreement between the financiers and the team behind Trump, in some manner, well, that the financiers will share powers with the industrialists, then perhaps it is not as frightening because they will endure this collapse by demolishing what is referred to as the deep state, which was funded by bankers. As a result, new individuals will emerge who will attempt to establish a standard economic order, replacing the previous system that was plagued by corruption and inefficiency. Once again, because I am not an expert on the internal workings of the White House and the American political governing system, I cannot offer in-depth knowledge or analysis on these subjects. Therefore, particularly in its present form, I will not be providing any comments on this matter. I'll say it again, I really hope that I will still invite some experts, and maybe we will come up with something on this topic and discuss it. Because it's clear this topic is becoming increasingly relevant. How they are situated in that location, in principle, can come to an agreement among themselves. And what to do with the current ones who are in a state of severe inadequacy. In the event of a collapse, the picture becomes wonderful. Yes, they are being accused of orchestrating this collapse, and now Trump is arriving. Trump is getting completely new people who are already being trained there by American consultants. There are 35,000 people, and to these 35,000, they clearly explain the rules of the game. That, guys, there are such right guys, financiers, and you can't offend them in this place. You can kick out all these old folks. Here, I do not exclude the possibility that something similar could potentially occur in our country, particularly given that in general the same individuals, in a manner of speaking, with their own values and objectives, organize the financial and monetary policy channel in a similar manner to how it is done in Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States of America, where the government makes decisions on economic matters. Here is the picture. And this symptomatology, which is referred to as scout signs by Andrei Petrovich Devyatov, starts to ooze out from every crack, as described by him. This phenomenon of symptom manifestation is characterized by the gradual seepage of these signs, according to Devyatov's observations. And those two articles that I mentioned earlier, specifically referring to Larry Summers and his colleagues, as well as the employees of the Philadelphia Regional Reserve Bank, they complement and enhance this picture in a very significant way, providing valuable insights and contributing to our understanding of the subject matter in a substantial manner. And this circumstance must be taken into account. I would like to remind once again that both articles in Russian are available to me on my private Telegram channel, with my comments, and with comments from readers. I think there will be more comments added, but overall, it can be said that radical changes are beginning to occur in the world, not only at a political level, but also at an economic level. It's starting to touch upon those aspects, those lines, those moments that were previously absolutely taboo in terms of changes. The theory of liberal economics was an absolute taboo, and it was categorically forbidden to discuss its incorrectness, the inaccuracy of the numbers, and other related aspects in the public domain. Any mention of these issues was strictly off limits and not open for debate or scrutiny. Individuals who have an interest can view my discussions, such as the one I had with Sergei Guriev in 2008. At the time, Guriev was the rector of the HSE and renowned as one of the gurus of liberal economic theory in Russia. Those who wish to gain insights into this topic can find valuable information by watching our conversation from that year. And as a result, in a broad sense, this particular situation has endured up until the present moment in time. And for this reason, the changes that are happening seem to me fundamentally important and incredibly interesting. For this reason, I strongly encourage all individuals who are interested in the topic to still take a look at and carefully read these articles. But that's the end of our time. In the Russian language economics studio was Mikhail Khazin. Thank you for your attention.